Let's do some work on the UI. The first thing I want to do is take some of the panels we have in here, like the quest and the recipes and the player information, and make them into something that can be hidden and shown and moved around so the player can customize their layout a little bit. For example, if you'll notice down here in the lower left, we have quest and recipes. We used to have the inventory down here. So now I'm going to press the letter I on the keyboard, and now the inventory shows up. I press I again, and it disappears. And I can move this around on the screen and position it wherever I want. Then hide it, redisplay it, and it's still in a new place on the screen. We're going to manage this by taking things out of the data grid layout that we have and putting them into a canvas layout, which is better for graphics and more specific alignment of controls on the screen. And as you can probably guess by the change, we're starting with this inventory tab. So let's stop the game and get into the code. We'll start by creating a new class in the soscsrpg.models project. This is called pop-up details. It has a Boolean property for whether or not the pop-up is visible. We have some integers for the top and left, which are the X and Y coordinates where the pop-up starts. And then we have some min height, min width, and max width properties. So we have a little bit of control, and we make sure the pop-up isn't really small or isn't really big. We're going to use this class for, right now, the inventory details, but eventually for the quest, for the recipes, and for the player information. The next thing we need to do is go into the game session class. On line 93, we're going to add a new property. It's a pop-up details, and it's the inventory details. So this will be the property we bind to for the pop-up for the inventory details. And then in the constructor, on line 128, we're going to instantiate a pop-up details object and put it into the inventory details. This will just be the starting state of this. So is visible is false. Top and left are these X and Y positions, and then we have some min height, min width, and max width, just to make sure we don't get too small or too big. Then we're going to go into the main window.xaml in the WPF UI project, and we'll take a quick look at the old inventory quest and recipes. We had a tab control with tab items for the quest, for the recipes, and we used to have the inventories in here. And basically we're going to move the data grid that used to be in the inventory section into the new canvas. And we'll do this by creating the canvas that's up here on lines 54 through 131. And we set this canvas to the grid row 1, so it's beneath the menu, grid column 0, and we give it a row span of 2 and a column span of 2. So it covers that whole game area, everything except for the menu. And we also give it a z-index of 99. The z-index is, think of it as layers. What we have to do is, for all the other grids we had, we're going to add a z-index of 1. So that puts it down towards the bottom layer. And you'll see we do it here on line 135 for the player stats, on line 196 for the gameplay, and on 299 for the inventory quest and recipes, and on 359 for the action controls. These are all set as 1, so they're all kind of on the bottom, towards the bottom. But the canvas, we set the z-index of 99. So this way any controls that are on the canvas are going to be on top of the old grid layout. So now that we have this main game canvas that covers the screen, we're going to have a player inventory canvas, and this is a smaller one for just the player's inventory. If you notice, we bind it to the inventory details properties, the top left position, the min height and max height. The is visible is bound to the is visible property. And then within this canvas, we draw some other controls. We have a border, and then we have the data grid which is basically what we had down below for the tab item. This is now in the canvas for the pop-up details. We did add a little bit more to it. If you notice, we have the border here. It's navy. It has light blue steel background. And then we have a grid in here. We have a label on lines 84 through 87 that says inventory in bold. And then on 89 through 99, we have a button for the X to close the inventory window, which if we run the game and display the inventory pop-up details, so this inventory here is the label and this X is the button, so the player can click the X to close that and hide it, or they could just click the I another time. So that's what this whole canvas is. We have this border in the canvas, we have the background color, we have this label with inventory, we have the button to close, and then we have a data grid here that is what we used to have in the lower left as a tab item. And that data grid is the code here on 101 through 123. And this was basically just cut and paste from the old tab item. The final change is to go into mainwindow.xaml.cs and add some code to handle the events, like the I key press making the inventory details visible or invisible, and then the dragging. And we'll start with the drag. On line 26, there's this new backing variable, drag start, and it's a point. So it's an XY coordinate. And this is within the inventory details canvas where we click. So when we want to drag, I can click here in the top left of the canvas and drag. I can click over here in the lower right and drag. So this drag start is exactly where inside this canvas I'm clicking. It's not the big large canvas for the whole game, but just this small one. So that's going to be a variable we have to store at the class level, because we have the mouse down event that we monitor to see if we need to start dragging something, and then we have the mouse up event that we need to monitor to see if we're done dragging. And we need this drag start value for both those functions. In the constructor, on lines 37 through 45, I added a new for each. So this is going to look at each UI element inside the game canvas children. So remember that game canvas is the big main whole screen canvas. And we're going to look at its children. In this case, this one here on line 61 is a canvas child. And any child element of the game canvas that is another canvas, we're going to add these event handlers. So if you click the mouse down on one of those canvases, then it's going to call this mouse down function. If you move the mouse, or if you release the mouse, then these functions will run. And this will be applied to all the child canvases of the game canvas. Right now we only have the one, the inventory, but in the near future we're going to have the quest, the recipes, and the player stats. Next we need to go down to line 109, the initialize user input actions, and add this new user input action for the key I. So if the player presses the letter I, then we're going to say game session inventory details is visible equals not game session inventory details is visible. So it's basically inverting the state. If it was visible, then this would be true. So then we're going to set it to not true, which is false. And if it wasn't visible, this would be false. We do not false, and that equals true. Then down here in the main window on key down, this is something we didn't add before, but something we probably should have added. On line 121, I added this e.handled equals true. And it says if we find the key in the key list, then we want to invoke the code, run the function. And now I'm saying we want to do this e handled equals true. That basically tells the program that this function handled the key press and you don't need to do anything else. Otherwise, if you were in a text box, for example, if we didn't do eHandle equals true and we pressed the letter I, it would run this code and it would type the I inside the text box. But here we're saying, no, this function handled the key press. You don't need to do anything else. Then down on starting on line 206, we have the new functions for the canvas, the inventory details canvas. We have this close inventory window on click, which is where we set the game session inventory details is visible to false. And this is the event we have for the X button. So if they click that X in the upper right of the canvas, if they click that button, then we're going to say inventory details is not visible. Then from lines 211 through 257, we have the three new mouse functions. So we have on mouse down. We're going to see, if it's not the left mouse, we don't care, we'll just return. But if it is the left mouse, we're going to find out with the element it was on, which would be the inventory details canvas. We're going to get the position of that element and put it in the drag start. And then we're going to start capturing the mouse on that element. So that tells the program anything we do with the mouse, we really want to care about just within the context of that inventory details pop-up, not the rest of the other canvas or the rest of the UI. And then we'll have our eHandled equals true, just so the program doesn't try to run anything else. I'm going to skip over this on mouse move for a second. This is the on mouse up, so you click the mouse button down, you drag and move something, and then you release the mouse button. This on mouse up will be fired. So here we get the canvas, and we say release the mouse capture on from that canvas. So now it's back to just anywhere in the UI. And we clear out the drag start position because now we don't have a selected canvas. And then we say eHandled equals true just to not run anything else. So then we have this on canvas, or the game canvas on mouse move on 225. This is the function that lets us redraw the inventory details pop-up whenever we move after we've clicked mouse down and while we're holding mouse down. So we check to see, make sure that drag start, if drag start is null or the button pressed is not the left button, then we're going to return. We don't care. That means we don't have something selected, or we click the right mouse button. Otherwise, we're going to get the position of the mouse on the game canvas. We're going to find out which element we're working with, which would be the inventory details pop-up. We're going to do some checks here to make sure that the mouse hasn't moved off the screen. I'm not 100% sure this is working the best way it can, because it is possible to move quickly and kind of move the panel a little bit off the screen, but this seems to be good, at least for right now. I do want to take a look at this some more and maybe optimize this and fix it up a little bit. But as long as they're still on the screen, so if it's off the screen it returns, otherwise it's going to set the left position and the top position of the moving element, which is the inventory details pop-up, to whatever it should be based on the mouse position and the drag start. And then we're going to say this is handled. So when we click the mouse down, this fires. It says we're doing something with the inventory details pop-up. When we keep the mouse down, the left button down, and we drag it around to a new position, as long as it's still on the screen, we'll reposition that canvas, the inventory details pop-up canvas. And then once we let the mouse up, then we stop caring about that. And those are all the changes we need to do to add in that ability to hide and show the inventory details and reposition it. The next lessons we're going to do will move the quest and the recipes into their own pop-up canvases and the player stats. Eventually I do want some of the player stats to be on the screen, like having the hit points probably have a bar here that shows you the maximum hit points and your current hit points, maybe show your level and name, some other information. But this will let us get everything off the left side out of the data grid and into these, what I think are nicer and more easier to work with controls, at least from the player's point of view. Then after we do that, what I want to do is save all the pop-up details information in the game save file. So this way the player can start the game, hide or show their different pop-up details, position them where they want, and then when they exit the game, it will save all these details so the next time they come into the game, their pop-ups are the same way they left them. Of course, the final step of this lesson, like always, is build your game and test it, make sure everything works. If you have any questions or comments about this, please leave a question beneath the video or on the support page, and I will get back to you as soon as possible.